welcome everybody to the next Behavioral Economics Today podcast. And I'm Hugh, Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behavior International, and we're the sponsor of the podcast. And our goal with these podcasts is to bring out live applications of how psychology and economics intersect. And I think there's no more important area than behavior and health. And with the enormous health costs that the world faces today and insurance carriers have got to deal with, I'm very lucky to have with me Deepak Patel, who is the chief clinical specialist and head of research at Vitality, which is part of the Discovery Group in South Africa. And they've been doing work for a long time in this area. It's as Deepak's just said to me, it's highly evidence-based. It's pulling every behavioral lever that's there. So welcome, Deepak.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you for having me on this podcast and for allowing me the opportunity to talk about our program.
So just to give the audience just a little background on you and how you got to being so passionate about behavior and health, because you've really made it your career. So I think that's a good starting place, and then that'll lead into the research projects that we'll talk about.
So it's been a bit of a serendipitous kind of route. I'm a South African. I've lived in South Africa all my life, and actually in one city, Johannesburg. But kind of, I believe I live through two worlds, as most people know. South Africa kind of was one world under apartheid, and in 1994 we saw the end of apartheid, and we've been in the last 30 years or so in a democratic South Africa, and I've kind of lived slightly more than half my life in apartheid South Africa, and slightly less than half my life in a democratic South Africa. I'm a medical doctor. I studied at Wits University, and soon after my internship, I had always wanted to go into public health. At that time, I joined the Department of Community Health, it was called, which really had been established just a few years before I joined. And I didn't really find my feet in that young department. So I asked to be seconded to pediatrics. I was at that time quite terrified of sick kids.
Yeah.
But within a few months of that secondment, I found that extremely enjoyable, actually, profession. And I went on to completing a senior internship, and then became what's known in America as a resident in the pediatric training program, or registrarship. And that was one of the most rewarding kind of jobs. I worked at one of the biggest hospitals, I think, in the world, Baragwanath Hospital, a wonderful training hospital, still remains so, actually. And then, because I had a great interest in research, got a Medical Research Council fellowship in mineral metabolism and nutrition. And I did that for 3 years, research in mineral metabolism in children. And then got a job as a consultant at Barra. Subsequently, because of financial pressure, I went into private practice. And quite fortuitously, after several years of kind of private practice, one of my patients, or one of the parents of my patients, who worked at Discovery from very kind of early stages of Discovery being established, suggested I apply for a job at Discovery, which, given kind of the long hours, I found quite attractive. So I joined Discovery Health initially, and was looking at kind of elevated medical kind of queries. But within 2 years of kind of 2 to 3 years, um, in that time, I kind of did a master's in sports medicine. And what really attracted me was Vitality. So I asked, Vitality was at that time made kind of into an independent organization within the Discovery Group. And I spoke to the CEO, who's still in the Vitality Global business, and he, on a whim, employed me for 6 months. I really didn't have a clear idea of what I was meant to do in Vitality, but basically, after 6 months, it was clear that I should be doing research. The program had been in existence for about 10 years. And although we knew it kind of worked reasonably well, we didn't have the scientific evidence. So I pulled together a group of academics from UCT, that's the University of Cape Town, from Wits, and we began to kind of examine the data we had already had. And at that time, we didn't really know how Vitality kind of compared to other programs globally, but we soon discovered that it was a pretty unique kind of program, that there weren't probably any health insurers who had a similar program globally. Health insurers who are promoting prevention, but not kind of health promotion the way we had been. So we published our first papers. Of course, it was a retrospective analysis, and we didn't get it into the best journals, but it was good quality research, which showed, in fact, that longitudinal data that showed that engagement in Vitality was associated with better health outcomes, lower healthcare costs. And we were able to establish a kind of dose effect even. And we were able to establish in that initial research that there was evidence of behavior change on the program, that it wasn't simply selection, that healthier people kind of selected the program. I mean, there was that, but it wasn't the only thing. So, yeah, that's my circuitous route, and I've stayed in Vitality. We don't have, fortunately, an official retirement age, so I'm going to continue doing academic work in a corporate setting.
Well, why not do something that you're passionate about and is having huge global impact? Because I think that, it's important for the listeners to understand the Vitality program is, if I understand it, available in more than 40 countries. So it's having a huge global impact. And from what I could see, there isn't nothing like it. You've taken it to, behavior and health to a new level. And I think with personalization and machine learning, you're going to be able to leverage it to go even further. But maybe we'll come back to that, about that. So for the behavioral economics guide, you've written the two articles, Nudging Towards Good Health and then Preventative Screening and Habit Formation. So we'll sort of work through the general concepts as much as you want to share on both of them. But Deepak, maybe just talk about the shared value model and sort of the overall approach, which was the tenor of the first paper that I mentioned there, because I think that sets the scene pretty well.
Yes, so I think, perhaps it's important for people to know that Discovery is a pretty young company, adolescent, kind of only 33 years old. And the people who kind of started Discovery, actuaries mainly, Edwin Gore is our group CEO, and he kind of had this vision of creating a new model of health insurance. And, it's somewhat legendary that, he got one of the big financial institutions to buy into his thinking. And I think from early on, they had this idea that healthcare funders should be looking not just at healthcare, but also at health. So, I mean, that was an important, I mean, it's a distinction I make, and perhaps that's not exactly the way they would have put it, but basically the distinction between health and healthcare. And I think there was some sort of appreciation that healthcare is a bottomless pit, that it's going to continue increasing, and that unless there is an emphasis on people's health, well-being, wellness, uh, that those healthcare costs would not be kind of mitigated or reduced. So that idea had been there, I think, from kind of the inception of Discovery, but was put into practice when Vitality was formed 5 years after Discovery was established. And it started with one kind of intervention and a few rewards. The main intervention at that time was a free gym benefit. In fact, I wasn't part of Discovery, but I changed my life insurance from one of the big firms to Vitality because I valued that free membership. Our family was using the gym membership, swimming. So I think what I think the founders of Discovery kind of initially, I think what motivated them was this, what's known as creative disruption.
Yep.
I think there were Nobel laureates this year who got a Nobel Prize for writing about creative disruption. The shared value concept, although it was there from the beginning, I think was adopted a bit later. What it is at a health level, is where member is a non-zero sum game. So member kind of derives the health benefits, which inherently valuable or should be inherently valuable, derives rewards for being healthy. The healthcare funder has reduced costs, and society in general benefits from having healthier kind of citizens. We've built on that model in other insurance platforms. For instance, Discovery Insure is about driving behavior, and we have a Vitality Drive program where we look at driving behavior, and we've also built on it kind of vertically. So, for instance, we have something called a VARD program, which is an active rewards program for doctors. So
Yeah.
all doctors in the country are free to join our program, and they get rewarded for being healthy. And the thinking behind that is that healthy doctors have healthy patients, and we've got some evidence for that.
Well, it's a general
So,
leadership, isn't it? It just outright, I suppose intuitively, if the doctor's healthy and looks good, that's going to encourage the patients. And certainly the doctor, it's hard for a doctor to lecture a patient about their health if they're not looking good. You know,
So yeah, I mean, it's something we take quite seriously,
yeah,
because there's a high rate of burnout amongst doctors. Everyone's talking about patient health, but very few people talk about doctor health. So we've got a helpline for doctors, we've got a healthy company program for doctors, and we've got this Vitality Active Rewards for doctors specifically. And we're going to write about that, publish some research on that soon.
and I think what if just to progress it, one area you particularly look at in this is, as part of the programs and the measurements, is how sedentary people are. And if I understood the papers, that people that are more active, generally speaking, aren't going to be as prone to some of the chronic diseases. And that's one of your measurements, and where you're incentivizing people essentially to be more active. If I
Absolutely. So
captured
I
that
think that,
correctly. Yeah.
yes, and I think what we talk about, at least in the introduction of that first paper, is how the medical landscape has changed over the last 50, 70 years, and how infectious disease globally, notwithstanding the HIV epidemic and COVID pandemic that we've experienced, but there's been a steady kind of decline in infectious disease and a steady increase in chronic diseases. And that kind of change in that medical landscape affects virtually every country, including developing countries. So I think Vitality was formed largely to mitigate the effects of chronic diseases. But what we've discovered and what we've published, that it goes well beyond just chronic diseases. We've shown that, and we got one of the papers I'm most proud about is how people who are physically engaged in Vitality had much better kind of COVID outcomes.
Yeah.
And we've got fantastic data, not self-reported. We were measuring their physical activity, and we could show that there was a 40% reduction in serious health outcomes in people who were what we call high engaged, meeting the WHO kind of recommendations on physical activity, 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity a week, compared to people who were doing less than 60 minutes of physical activity a week. So we were able to show at least a 40% improvement in severe outcome, including mortality. So yes, it's not just chronic diseases, it's acute diseases. We've shown some effect on depression. And I think overall, our engaged members and more people on our program are engaged, are healthier in terms of many outcomes.
And have you seen a conclusion with that in terms of how much longer somebody might live? How many years extra of life they get? Or in terms of because you talk about it in the paper as well, it's something I look at even for myself. I know my biological age is 12 years younger than my chronological age because of my health practices, I think.
Right.
The
Yes,
full
I
suite
mean,
of them.
so, I mean, that's very much kind of what we're looking at. And, it's captured by lifespan and health span, by the concepts of lifespan and health span. And while we obviously kind of want our members to live longer, I mean, it's what members want. And from an insurance point of view, of course, it's beneficial, I think. I'm not a businessman, but, having people living longer means greater subscriptions, etc. But we don't want people to live longer and spend a huge amount of that time. And most people don't want that for themselves either, in a state of chronic illness. So for
Yeah.
us, it's important that not only do they improve their lifespan, but they do improve their health span too. I can't tell you exactly how, but we know that there's a staggered increase in lifespan. Our diamond members live much longer. In South Africa, it's around 84, 85 years, kind of average life expectancy, and it reduces by the various kind of statuses. So we have blue, bronze, gold, and diamond here. So we are able to show that difference, and people who are not on Vitality have a shorter life expectancy. And here we're talking about comparison to Discovery Health members who are not on the Vitality program. and not to the general population, which, as you might know, in South Africa, we've had a severe regression in life expectancy, which is now improving, but because of the HIV epidemic. So we're not comparing to the general South African population. We're comparing to Discovery Health members who are not on Vitality.
Yeah, I think the quality of life is important. There's no point living longer if you can't enjoy life. But you would think that if you get yourself healthier and fitter, you do the 150 minutes a week of activity and and other things, then generally the quality of life uh, should go up. So Deepak, what about the types of behavioral biases that are inbuilt into the program? Because there's lots of questions I could ask you about the health side of things, and we might come back to some of those. But just the behavioral biases that you're using in the incentives, and how you've managed that.
So I think we have many interventions and some flagship kind of interventions, particularly around physical activity, where we have something called a Vitality Active Rewards program, and we talk a lot about it in that first paper. And then we have something called a Healthy Food Benefit, which is also a flagship program. But perhaps, going back to the behavioral intervention, incentives and rewards kind of form a large part of our program. Now, some people may argue that incentives and rewards are part of kind of standard economics, and they do change behavior, and that behavioral economics goes beyond incentives and rewards. What we have done is we've uh, kind of presented incentives and rewards in a completely different way than you would find in the literature. We think of incentives as lowering the barriers to interventions that improve your health. So if we take physical activity, for instance, in South Africa, we had what was previously a free gym membership. Now people pay kind of a small amount towards gym membership, but we lower the barrier for people to join the gym.
Yeah.
Similarly, for healthy food, we lower the barrier for people to buy healthy food. So if you complete a vitality assessment online and do a vitality health check, which is a basic health check at a pharmacy, you qualify for 25% sort of rebates on purchase of healthy food, fruits and vegetables, lentils, etc. So, those are the incentives which lower the barrier for people to engage in healthy behavior. We then reward engagement. So the more you are active, we will reward you. And we reward you on a weekly basis. And there's some rewards that occur on a monthly basis and some on a yearly basis. The yearly basis is based on your status you achieve for your full engagement. And I've talked about the various statuses, but for us, a diamond member is really super healthy.
Yeah.
In terms of the health, they would be a diamond kind of member. They would be engaged fully in the program with physical activity, with prevention. Incentives and rewards are a key part of the program. But within the program, there's some interventions that have inbuilt kind of behavioral nudges. So if you take the Vitality Active Rewards program, for instance, we made it available on an app. You can kind of monitor your physical activity on a weekly basis by just looking at your ring. And that's a motivator. We think that, just if you set a goal or someone else sets a goal for you, that's what we do. Depending on activity, we set a weekly goal for you. And it starts off at a very low level, but it increases as you engage with the program. If someone sets a goal for you, you're more likely to achieve that goal. You can see uh, your your level of engagement on a
Yeah.
daily basis, and on a weekly basis, you reward it if you achieve uh, that goal. There's a game board, so there's a bit of gamification. Everyone wins something. Sometimes you win a large number of what we call discovery mounts. It's basically the currency. That's a discovery currency. You can monetize it or you can spend it uh, on a large number of kind of aspirational purchases from a large number of stores. So you can buy books if you want to, you can buy electricity, or importantly, you can just donate your weekly reward. So we have charitable giving, it's called Move to Give. And
Yeah.
there are an impressive number of people who actually don't redeem their rewards for themselves, but actually donate to charity. So we've built these very many kind of nudges, incentives. Linked to the Vitality Active Rewards is an Apple Watch benefit. We're extending that to Garmin. And what that is you've got to have, there you are, Garmin. uh, you've got to have a Discovery. Previously, it was a Discovery card, but you have to be part of the Discovery Bank, which we had launched very recently. And so we don't encourage people who are not credit worthy to take out the watch, but people who, in a sense, are credit worthy can take out a watch. There's an initial kind of fee you pay, activation fee, but then on a monthly basis, that you don't have to pay for the watch if you achieve your monthly goals. You don't have to. So my wife, who's achieved every monthly goal for 2 years, was able to get virtually a free watch.
Yeah.
I haven't been always that consistent, so sometimes I had to pay a certain amount towards the watch. So, there are many kind of behavioral interventions. The Apple Watch intervention is based on loss aversion. We
Yeah.
think that people who um, would have to pay for their watch to avoid paying are more likely. Although we can't prove it conclusively, we do think that people are more likely to want to kind of meet their goals because of that loss aversion.
Yeah, I think it's an incentive that you're providing there, but also at the front end, you're making people pay something to participate. So it's not a complete freebie where they may not value the experience. In a way, you're making people
It's
value the experience, including buying the watch. But here's a way to get all the money back if you follow all the steps, um, which appeals to the loss
absolutely.
aversion, but is also getting people to be healthy.
And there's huge evidence. Sorry.
Yeah.
We found huge evidence that actually that wearables make a big difference to people's level of activity, that people are more likely to maintain. And we saw this during the pandemic, that people who had a watch or Fitbit at that time, uh, or even a Garmin watch, were more likely to continue engaging in physical activity, or at least we were able to record it. Um, so when the gyms closed during lockdown, we had this ongoing activity amongst people who had a watch, and we're encouraging more and more um, people to get the Garmin watch. We're making it affordable, the Apple Watch and other wearables.
And if we talk about the motivator for the habit change, is it only financial or is it actually it's the financial is there, but there's also balanced there in some way, more intrinsic motivations and desires.
So um,
Like
I think
happiness, I
that most,
be one. Um,
yes, and I think, look, uh, you know, I come from a health background. You come from a financial background. I must say, I think that most people know from a health point of view that it's important for them to exercise. Most people know that they should be eating healthy and maintaining a good weight. Um, Personally, I don't know all the financial kind of habits I should be adopting to have the best finances. But in terms of health, most people know. Uh, what they don't have is sometimes uh, the intrinsic motivation to overcome the environmental kind of impediments. People
yeah,
talk about obesogenic environments, and we do live in obesogenic environments, so they don't have the motivation. Uh, but I think once people begin to engage, and we encourage a stepwise improvement. So the whole status thing is about a stepwise improvement. The VAR program is a stepwise improvement, and you if you achieve your goal, we don't immediately increase your goals. We kind of maintain you on a certain kind of level and then slowly increase it until kind of you achieve and the maximum points you can achieve. Um, so generally, we find that once people kind of become quite engaged, uh, they maintain. There's a kind of intrinsic motivation that kicks in, uh, and I'm increasingly like beginning to believe that being physically active is almost a primordial need. From an evolutionary point of view, we've always been active. I mean, hunter gatherers, etc. And that it's really only in the last 70, 80 years that there's been a precipitous kind of drop in society's level of physical activity. But the diseases associated with a lack of physical activity and sedentary behaviors seem to suggest that we need to be active to live healthier lives. So it's almost a primordial need. And I think once people become active over, it's variable between 6 and 12 weeks, you know, we don't see the kind of intrinsic motivation seems to drop to kind of kick in, and the external rewards don't play such an important role. I mean, to be honest, we don't know for sure because we haven't removed rewards. I mean, the program has always improved on rewards, but not removed it. But our intuition is that intrinsic kind of motivation does kick in.
and I would have thought, I'm just connecting dots, and my own intuitive reaction, Deepak, is that given that you've got quite a lot of people donating the reward benefit to charities, is telling you something. They might have been baited into it or gamed into it by the financial reward and the structure of the program, but now they're in there and they're engaged and they're healthy, and in actual fact, the signal of their happiness that comes from health is actually giving money to other people, because that is often a driver of that. And in fact, the money isn't really the big thing at the end of the day. And I suppose there's a connection there in my mind to be explored. And the other thing that's sort of burning in my mind, as I think because of the other work I've done, and you mentioned money, is because money is such a high causer of stress or financial anxiety, which causes stress for people, that plays into your heart rate variability and your sleep. That the whole which then is correlated, then plays into how much exercise you do, what you eat. If you're stressed, you're probably not going to exercise as much, although exercise can help stress. And then there's then there's the eating part as well. When you're stressed, you tend to eat worse foods or drink more alcohol, and it's a bit of a cycle. And I think I've myself, till I've studied your papers now, been very very focused on helping people or getting people to see that their heart rate variability needs to be managed, because that's a signal of stress, and that stress is what accelerates aging and all these problems. Um, that's my take, with it, and I'm sure you're doing more and more, probably more and more research on things like that. I see that financial stress is an issue for people in all of this.
No, absolutely. I think, and whichever way you kind of look at it, there's uh, often a two-way relationship, kind of between health behaviors and financial kind of behaviors and sleep. So we find that many kind of uh, factors that affect health are interrelated. We know for sure, in fact, from our research that, and in fact, there's now global research showing that physical activity is one of the most important kind of interventions for depression. Um, but we've shown to some extent that it prevents depression. Um, so, uh, but also depression may lead to people being less physically active. And I think part of our kind of research is to show the independent kind of effects. We uh, and increasingly we find, so we've just launched in South Africa and globally kind of a sleep intervention. It was something that we were missing. I think we've launched it next year. We're going to launch it with the Aura Ring as a benefit, and it's going to be a bit like the Apple Watch benefit. And we're going to encourage people to kind of sleep better, at least the behaviors around sleep that they can change, which is duration, um,
And the
and the
quality of it as well.
regular.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're hoping, that it's going to lead to better quality sleep. If you sleep, your sleep hygiene improves, the quality of your sleep will improve. Uh, but finance remains obviously a big source of stress. And Discovery Bank, uh, there, I'm not part of the bank uh, kind of environment, but I know that the bank has programs to improve people's financial behaviors. Uh, and again, there are rings depending on how well you're doing with your savings, your retirement savings, etc. So Discovery Bank is very much about not just health behavior, but also about financial behaviors.
So yeah, and so the linkage there for me, this was the thing I was going to throw in the pot, that I've done quite a lot of work on the relationship between the because we do psychometric measurement of people, that what we call in our system, the DNA behavior system, the planned factor, which is in the big five system, is conscientiousness. That people who are more conscientious, they're more self-disciplined, focused, they make less silly decisions. That there's quite a lot of research. I could send you the paper. There's quite a lot of research out there that for people who are more conscientious, which can be a learned behavior, and I think in a way you're incentivizing people to be conscientious here with the incentives, they will live longer, and they will do better on the health side. But they are also the people that do better financially. They are the better savers. So there's a correlation there in a way that at the end of the day, if you want financial longevity, being planned is helpful. And some people are naturally that way. but it is that kind of behavior that you can work at it if you want to, uh, and you're providing the incentive. So, I think there's lots of research here to do in these areas. Um, and just to progress sort of towards the end here, Deepak, I know you're doing a lot more with machine learning, and to uh, go further with the personalization. So just tell us a little bit about that, because that's something that I'm very big on, is every person having a tailor-made suit uh, for them, that the solutions provided are personalized to who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of the next level at which we kind of directing the program. We have a huge amount of data from the Vitality program, from health claims, uh, uh, from preventive kind of activity, about what people are doing and where they are in terms of their health. I think we call it the personal health pathway. It's kind of almost self-explanatory. So we use all the data we have to then nudge people to do what is probably the next best thing for them to do. And based on machine learning, we can kind of estimate the probability of doing that next best thing. So we'll present that next best thing based both on the probability of them doing it and based on kind of their health status. Um, so, for instance, currently we have for, let's say, women who should get a mammogram, the recommendation is that over the age of 40, every 2 years, you should get a mammogram. Um, there's some people who've had, unfortunately, they've had breast cancer and they've had a mastectomy, uh, and they shouldn't then be getting a mammogram. And, we're trying to personalize that information. So we know that, and we wouldn't be recommending a mammogram for them. We'd be recommending something else based on the health data. So we want to get to that level of personalization. We also want to, over a period of time, bring in family history, and we will have kind of longitudinal data. So we can also kind of estimate their risk based on family history. And the more data we get around health behaviors, and this is all data we will only use, based um, on on members giving kind of permission to use that data. So we will use that data to kind of personalize what we recommend and then how we reward them for it. So the program is only going to improve with that personalization. And over time, I think, particularly around kind of the sticky behaviors that people like around prevention that they don't engage in, we're hoping to shift that dial. We're hoping that people are going to, with personalization, which says, dear you should have this and this. That people are more likely. We've shown that in previous research, when we personalize a recommendation, people are more likely to engage in uh, that activity.
Yeah, and we've been
So,
helping. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that's going to be a big development over the next few years.
yeah, because we've been helping people with that, of just around how a solution is communicated, um, to get them to buy in, and I think that's a big part of personalization, so that they see, because it can be the same solution, but different people will see it differently or look for a different benefit in it, and so that's a lot of work that we've done, particularly with financial services organizations, but this isn't really any different. So
Yeah,
just to
and
wrap up, yeah. So go on, Deepak. Yep.
sorry, yeah, and we kind of in that process will be testing, continuous process of testing how messages are kind of perceived or received, how people act on it, and we'll try and improve on the framing of those messages,
Yeah.
and we're going to rely on machine learning for that a lot.
Yeah. So is there anything that you would like to sort of finish up with and to anybody else considering programs like this, not necessarily in health, but if you want to call it change management and life change management, uh, just any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I would go back to what I've already said. I think most people around, particularly around health, but perhaps also around other kind of behaviors, know what is good, sort of good behaviors, and what's likely to improve their outcomes, whether it's health or financial outcomes. Um, I think when you're thinking about an incentive program, you have to first think about how you're going to make it easier for people to engage in those programs. So it's not a patronizing kind of attitude. It's not contingent rewards only. If you do this, you will get that. Um, it's it's lowering the barriers, improving access, um, and then actually encouraging people with rewards to continue engaging. Um, so, and that's been kind of the approach we've adopted, and it's worked. I wouldn't say 100% of our members are engaged, but I think we've got an impressive level of engagement. I don't think any comparable program, kind of comes anywhere near what we've done. And much of it has been done almost kind of based on research, but because innovation is built into kind of the DNA, if I'd use that word, of the company, there's a yearly kind of innovation cycle. There's some things that don't work wonderfully, but there are other things that surprisingly work amazingly well, actually.
You've always got to be doing the experiments, and I suppose the more data you get, then the experiments get better and the results come quicker.
Absolutely. So I think that's built into the program.
Yeah.
And it's because it's kind of actuarially heavy kind of company, there's constant analysis and refinement.
So thank you, Deepak. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I think hopefully our listeners have learned a lot about behavior and health, just generally to take action for yourselves, but also the methodology here has been very carefully thought out. It's extremely professional and certainly it involves understanding humans at a very deep level. So thank you, Deepak.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about kind of our program and about health. And I hope people get some encouragement from this podcast and from our papers.
Yeah, absolutely.